I'm Jacob Courtwright, and this is The Locker Room.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome into yet another episode of Saturday Morning Pick'ems with the boys. And today I'm joined by not only my brother, but one of my best friends, somebody that grew up watching every single sport with me, literally till the day that we die. We have watched every single big game together. We always, like you would expect, have different teams on both sides of the aisle, so we were always kind of rooting against each other in many ways. But there was one harmonious moment when LeBron James teamed up with Dwayne Wade down in Miami that we were cheering for the same team once and for all. Even if it was for a few short years, those are still some good memories. But welcome in, Justin. Glad to have you today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, we've got a full show today, and there's a lot of games that were postponed or canceled due to the COVID situation. So we have some kind of unconventional games that you probably wouldn't hear a lot about, not only on, College Game Day, but on our Saturday morning pick'em show. But first, we are going to go straight to one of my favorite matchups of the day, Kentucky versus number 18, Tennessee. The Wildcats look to upset Tennessee at home. They have not won in Knoxville since 1984. After Tennessee had an 8-game winning streak, it was snapped by Georgia last week, and it looked good in the first half, but it ended up being a rout in the second half. Kentucky is coming off their first win of the season, finally getting into the win column for them. Kentucky's high running attack is going against a Vols defense that is only allowing 3.3 yards on the ground a carry. So this game is going to come down to Garantano and his arm versus the Wildcats and their running attack. So, Justin, what do you think is going to happen in this game?
Well, here's how I look at it. I don't think Kentucky has enough power to last with Tennessee. Tennessee put up a great fight. I know they got destroyed by Georgia last week, but I like the way Tennessee's playing right now. I like how they have a mix of run, and Garantano did show some promise that he can put the ball in where it needs to be. He made some plays last week versus Georgia that those passes could only be made by certain quarterbacks. So I just don't think Kentucky has any shot, any matchup in this contest, and I'm going to go Tennessee by 3 touchdowns in this game.
Oh, Tennessee, 3 touchdowns already coming out the gate on fire. Well, like you said, this is going to come down to Garantano because the Kentucky Wildcats have a pretty good run defense as well, only allowing 3.1 yards on the ground. So with that being said, the question is, do I trust Garantano? And that question for me is no. So I'm going to go Kentucky in a freaking close one. I'm going to go 27-20. Kentucky edges out Tennessee simply off the fact that Garantano can't get it done. This is going to be one of my favorite games of the day, besides the game of the day that we'll talk about in just a moment. All right, now we're going to move on to another one of my favorites because I've found a weird love for both of these teams. UCF versus Memphis. Memphis has slowly grown into my heart, not only being from Tennessee and seeing them start to succeed, but producing running backs that just seem to be NFL plugins every single year into a system. And then UCF, the hopeful underdogs, they crown themselves the champions. You've got to love them. And they also have the best uniforms in the game with those moon helmets. But both teams are looking to bounce back after losses and maybe show their way back into a top 25 ranking, as both of them have been ranked in the top 25 and now have fallen out. The question is, Dylan Gabriel is a machine, averaging over 300 yards for UCF through the air, completing 63% of his passes and averaging 3 touchdowns a game, while their run game only has 470 total yards for the entire year. That is right. I said for the entire year. Now, Brady White is averaging 200 yards a game and is completing 71% of his passes and is averaging 2 touchdowns for the Memphis Tigers, which is easy when you have awesome wide receivers like Sean Dykes and DeMonte Coxey, 2 wide receivers that people think are going to go rounds 1 and rounds 2 in this upcoming draft. So besides that, Memphis also has 2 running backs averaging 160 total on the ground together. So with all that being said, the Tigers have not lost 10 straight coming into today at home, and they're going up against a high-powered air raid offense in UCF. So what do you think about this game?
So I'm going to go off your point. Memphis has not lost 10 straight in a row in years, ever. And so with that, as much as I love Memphis' two-headed running attack, they got 2 running backs.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Both running backs are definitely going to be in the NFL.
Yeah.
Those guys are just monsters on the ground. No one has been able to stop them all last year, and then coming into this year, no one can stop these guys. These guys are animals. But UCF is not used to losing. They don't lose. They do not lose. And so since they lost their one, they're going to get back on the winning track. They're going to beat Memphis by a margin of 4 to 5 touchdowns.
4 to 5 touchdowns. We are going big out the gate, already having a 9-touchdown sweep in the first two games of the day. Well, I am also in the same category as you. I don't see UCF losing 2 straight. We have not seen it happen in the last 3 years. So I'm going off of track record. I'm going off of what I've been able to see over the last few years. And UCF gets it done today in a close one. I'm going to go 34-31. UCF pulls it out at the end off the arm of course, their star quarterback. I just think Memphis's ground attack keeps them off the field a little bit more than they want to. That's why it's going to be a little bit lower scoring. But I'm going to go a close one here, and it is going to be a fun one. If you like scoring, I feel like this is going to be another shootout game for you at home. Now moving on to another game that I'm not sure a lot of people have ever talked about Boston College more than once on a college pick'em shows, and we have done that twice here already. Boston College versus number 23, Virginia Tech. Boston College comes in with real problems on the ground, averaging 40 yards. That is right. I said 40 yards for a game. I'm going to let that sink in at home. They're averaging 40 yards for the entire game thus far this year, so that is what we call not good. There are 44 other FBS players who are averaging more yards than the entire Boston College offense combined. So that is enough to be said for how bad their ground game is. Their wins have come off of the arm of Phil Jerkovich, averaging over 300 yards a game, but he's also averaging 3.4 sacks a game, as he has been able to take a lot of punishment thus far, but that is not good going further on into the season as we are still very early. But this is the week of the running game that has to be strong for Boston College if there ever is going to be one, because Virginia Tech gave up 399 yards on the ground to North Carolina. So if they're able to give up 400 yards to North Carolina, this is the time that Boston College has got to shine on the ground. But their hands are full on defense as they're facing the nation's leading rusher in Khalil Herbert, who averages 147 yards a game. With uncertainty at quarterback, they're making another change this week. Virginia Tech is going to be able to, of course, run, but we don't know what's going to happen at the quarterback position. So what do you think is going to happen in this one?
So this is how I look at it. I love Boston College's defense. Boston College has a good defense. I love their quarterback. He's playing really well. But I have to go back to the first week. Coming into the first week, Virginia Tech was missing 22 players due to COVID. And they just completely rolled over their NC State. They rolled over them, missing 22 players on their team. They were missing their quarterback. They were missing their starting lineman. They were missing their running back. They were missing 2 starting wide receivers. And on defense, they're missing 2 starting linebackers, a starting safety, and a starting defensive lineman. And that's just some of the 22 players that they're missing. And they just rolled over NC State. And to me, North Carolina is an incredible team this year. I think they're going to go far in the college football playoffs. And so with all of that, I have to go Virginia Tech hands down. And I think Virginia Tech is going to have no problems in beating Boston College at least 3 touchdowns, if not more, because I think that Virginia Tech offense is high flying, and I don't think Boston College can keep up with them.
See, another 3-touchdown sway for you in our third game of the day. See, I agree with you as well. I think Virginia Tech gets on track this week. That's a great point bringing up that they were missing 22 players and still managed to rout an NC State team that is never a slouch. They've always been competitive in the past. So I'm going to go Virginia Tech in a 38-34 victory, just for the simple fact that I think Boston College gets it done on the ground today, finally snaps out of their drought. They've allowed 400 yards in 2+ games this year. Virginia Tech has via the ground. So that being said, I think Boston College takes a little bit of that time of possession away by running it a little bit more. I think this comes down to the arm of the quarterback for Virginia Tech. Can the new quarterback step in and make the right play? And I think Henson Hooker will do that thing and win this game for Virginia Tech. Now we're going to move on to a game that's probably my favorite of the day, even though we have a game of the day. Liberty versus Syracuse. Liberty is coming in 4-0 to this game. Undefeated Liberty looks to keep it going this week. Malik Willis, the transfer from Auburn, has been the missing piece for this offensive. They have lacked quarterback play for the last several years. He is a true dual threat nightmare, leading them in passing and rushing the last 2 games against their opponents. And he's going up against one of the FBS's worst running ground defenses, allowing over 233 yards a game in Syracuse. Syracuse already can't score, and then they lost their starting quarterback in DeVito last week. So with a freshman QB, will they be able to have any success on the offensive side of the football? That is the big question here. What do you say about this game?
Well, look, most people have never, ever heard of Liberty in their life. And so they look at this game and they're like, oh, Syracuse definitely is going to win. And if people haven't seen Liberty play at all this year, then they don't know just actually how good this Liberty team is this year. This Liberty team is tough, they're gritty, and they don't back down from nobody. And as much as I hate to say it, Syracuse hasn't been good for years. And so with that, I gotta ride the Liberty train. I'm riding Liberty to win this game in a close one by 3 points, 27-30, and I'm gonna go Liberty.
Wow, the one time I go big point spread, you go small point spread. I'm going Liberty here without a doubt, 28-14. I just don't see Syracuse having any offensive firepower because we haven't seen it with their starting quarterback, and now they're bringing in a brand new quarterback, brand new pieces all the way around. So all that being said, this is where Liberty gets to shine on a big stage, and well-deserved at that because they have been a successful football team, getting to decent bowl games over the last several years. So Liberty gets it done, stays undefeated, and I predict makes the top 25 poll this week. They're coming in at number either 25 or 24. I hope to see that because that would be awesome. Now, moving on to another fantastic game of the day, number 11, Texas A&M versus Mississippi State. A true battle of offenses here will be on full display as Mike Leach faces Jimbo Fisher. Texas is coming off the biggest win of arguably their history besides the Alabama Miracle game, of course, when they had Johnny Manziel. But the big X factor in this Texas A&M game is going to be Kellen Mond, who has led his team to victories through the air. He is averaging over 300 yards a game over the last 2 games. No interceptions against Florida, which was a big step up for him as he has been a turnover machine lately. But it helps when you also have Spiller, who is the 3rd ranked running back in the SEC in rushing. And Mississippi State is still putting up big numbers, even though they are not statistically, or they're not winning those games. They statistically are right there with the best of them. So this is going to be a battle of not necessarily Spiller on the ground versus Costello in the throwing, but I think this is going to be Kellen Mond versus Costello, a good old-fashioned shootout to the end because these defenses cannot stop a single person. Now, we saw Texas A&M have some success last week against Florida, but I think that was more so Florida lacking in their offensive presence and Florida making a lot of mistakes. We saw a couple misreads on the handoffs, a couple misreads on the throws. So that being said, I'm not going to give Texas A&M's defense that much credit, and they're going up against an air raid offense that is going to be hard to figure out. Costello's had a couple bad games in a row, but he will look to bounce back this week. I think Costello is going to have a big day, and I think this is the day that Kellen Mond either solidifies himself as a top quarterback in the SEC or a bottom quarterback in the SEC. We can't have this up and down play anymore. So, what do you think about this game?
So I'm a big Mike Leach fan. I like Mike Leach. I think he's a great guy, and I loved him when he coached at Washington State, and he's bringing that same Washington State offense to this Mississippi State offense. He is just blossoming this QB in Costello. He's just blossoming him to be a transfer from Stanford, and now he's just going crazy in this Mississippi State offense. Now, Mississippi State's defense, that's the big issue on their team. They cannot stop anybody worth it. They have to outscore their opponents because they can't stop anybody on the defensive side. And Texas A&M, they have an okay defense, but I really like their running man, Spiller. He is a beast when it comes to running the ball. He is not afraid to put his shoulder pads down and run over somebody. And so for me, the X factor is going to be Kellen Mond, like you said. Can he become the quarterback and solidify himself as the guy in Texas A&M? Can he bring them all the way to the next step to where they want to be? And to me, I just don't see Kellen Mond doing that. And I believe in Mike Leach and I believe in Costello. I believe they get back on track and they beat number 11 Texas A&M 27-20.
That is a great take because you actually helped me persuade my gut feeling into switching my pick. This is the first time this has happened on the show. I had Texas A&M 35-28, but I wanted to go Mississippi State. I've been talked out of my gut before. That's not going to happen today. I'm flipping this. I'm going Texas A&M 28 and Mississippi State 35. I just think Mike Leach, we've not seen him, especially in Washington State, lose this many games in a row, especially off of bad quarterback play. I think he gets in the head of Costello. I think Costello has a big day, and they shock Texas A&M with a 35-28 victory. So I'm going to thank you for persuading me on that one because that is where I wanted to go. It's where I should have gone, and that is where I'm going. Now we are going on the game of the day, and what a game this one is. Number 3, Georgia versus number 2, Alabama. One of the best showdowns in all of college football, an Alabama offense that is leading the SEC against a Georgia defense that is leading the SEC. Bennett comes into the game for Georgia, completing 70% of his passes and throwing 0 interceptions, while Alabama, of course, and Mack Jones are just putting up Alabama numbers is the best way to put it. Scoring at will, it seems like. And they are going up a Bama defense that is going to be a little bit tricky for their running game, as Bama's defense tends to be better on the run, especially this year after losing so many players to the draft. They've given up a whole lot of yards through the air, but not on the ground, so they're going up against a tough run defense. This is, for me, the Mack Jones game. With Najee Harris, of course, still being a monster in the backfield, will he be shut down by a Georgia defense that is only allowing 1.5 yards a carry? That is right. I said 1.5 yards a carry and 115 total yards for the ground throughout the entire game over the last 2 games. This Georgia defense does not let you run the ball. So it's going to come down to the arm of Mack Jones. Can he be big time? Is Mack Jones the kind of guy that not necessarily is a relief factor for like a Tua Tagovailoa who can come in when the game's already solidified? But is he the guy? Is he the guy that Alabama can walk away saying this is the guy the rest of the year? That is the big question mark for me. This has got to be Mack Jones's career day. What do you think about this game?
So most people don't know this. Out of these 2 teams, they have met 69 times. This will be the 70th overall meeting between these 2 teams.
Yep.
And out of 69 times, Alabama has won 40 out of the 69 meetings that they have had. Now, Nick Saban, against all his former employees, all his former coordinators, has never lost to them. Yep. He's never lost to a former coordinator, and he's going up against another coordinator today, where he is going up against his former defensive coordinator and Kirby Smart for Georgia. Now, I believe Georgia's defense is out of this world, but with those 2 things, I got to say, with those 2 facts about Alabama, I'm switching and I'm going Georgia today. I'm going Georgia to knock off the number 1 team in Alabama. I don't think Alabama's defense is hardly as good as it has been in years. And I just think Georgia is going to be able to do whatever they want. This is going to shock some people. Georgia is going to win 35-14 to Alabama.
Wow, we've got a hammer going down in the big game of the day. I am with you. I do not think Alabama's defense can get it done. We saw them give up massive yards last week. We're going to see them give up massive yards this week. I'm going to go Georgia 21, Alabama 20. I just think Georgia makes too many more plays throughout the air and on the ground to really push this game into the right direction. This is going to be one of the best games we have seen in the last several years, with the best defense, in my opinion, in all of college football in Georgia, and a top offense in Alabama as always. Can Najee Harris get it done? Can Alabama and Mack Jones really solidify themselves to be contenders for the number 1 overall spot? I don't think so. I think Georgia gets it done. Well, there you have it. There are our games of the week. Make sure you go on Instagram and play along, vote along. Florida shocked everybody last week by losing, and therefore no perfect brackets have stood thus far. So will this week be the week that we have perfect pickers? We'll find out. Make sure you're following us at the Locker Room Podcast 615. Justin, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a blast. We will have you on soon. Thank you so much, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Locker Room faithful, I will see you on Tuesday.
We here at the Locker Room thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning pick'em. If you'd like to know how to play along at home, it is simple. You will now see a slide with all of my social media. Follow me on Instagram every Saturday morning and you can vote. At the end of the college football season, I will pick a winner for a cash prize for whoever gets the most right answers. So make sure you follow my social media. That is the only way to lock in your answer. You must follow, then join along and play.